Right guys, so we're back here again. I've just got ratchet ready. Make sure my hinges are sat up. Make sure the bolts are ready to go. I'm going to pop my spanner in there as well, just so we're ready to go. And I always like that little proddler thing handy. So again, I'm on my own. Going to be tricky lifting this on. It's not the heaviest, but it's still something we need to be mindful of. We don't want to be damaging any of the paintwork or just generally wrecking this poor customer's car. So again, this technique, can't see it very well from this point of view camera I suppose, but I'm going to ever so gently rest that on. I'm going to carefully have a look up there. Yep, I think I've got that maybe a little bit to one side. And whilst I'm here, I want to see if I can manipulate this into place. Enough to allow me to thread a bolt in by hand. That was quite tricky, but we got there. Same with the other side. Brilliant, much happier with that. And whilst I've got this tailgate in my hand, I'm going to wind these quite close, because when we reattach the gas struts, they're going to want to lever that, pivot it around, and it can make getting the remaining bolts in quite tricky. Hand tight as usual until we've got everything in. Run to this side. There we go. As usual, when we're trying to get bolts into difficult places, always be mindful that your bolt is going at the right angle. We don't want to risk crossing the threads. That's where, if the hole's in that direction, we don't want to be putting our bolt in at a skew whiff angle. And sometimes you can actually wind them in far enough that they'll start to turn, but unfortunately they jam up, and at that point you've damaged the threads, which can be, it's not impossible to fix, but it can be a bit of a pain. Right, gas strut on one side. There we are, and I'll just check that's happy. There's nothing like those pinging off when you don't expect it and then being clobbered by a tailgate. It might not be the heaviest tailgate, but it still doesn't help your head, I promise you. Most of us doing this job will have had the odd bump from time to time. Again, I'm just trying to see if there are any evidence marks. Remember, like we saw on the door and the wing and the bonnet. So we can line these bolts to them. As it happens, you may notice there's some little collets or little, almost like a hollow dowel if you like, just to help locate the tailgate. So I would suspect that these are fixed positions, and any adjustment might come from underneath, which would need dropping the head lining and accessing the bolt from the back. But I'm only guessing. That's just my gut feeling. Had the ratchet ready but didn't need it. But again, that's the joy of forward planning and thinking the task through. If you think the task through thoroughly, you're rarely left struggling or wanting and needing something else. Okay, happy with that. That's the tailgate on. At this point we could close it and check the gaps, but we would risk pinching and maybe damaging these. And this is the tricky part, trying to get a flexible wire to push. As you can see, all it wants to do is fold up on itself, so ideally we need to gently pull this through. Not something we can do, we can't reach our arm down that tiny little channel, but there are a few methods. Now a lot of people like to use welding wire, just a thin rod, and feed that down. I found over the years that This works quite nicely now. For those of you that are not in body shops or have access to body shops, might not know what this is. It's the liner from MIG welder. When you're using a MIG welder, the copper wire that comes through it flows or is pushed sometimes, pushed and pulled through a liner, one of these, and as you can see it's almost like a spring with a hollow bore. And they snag up eventually, they don't last forever. They do get damaged, which stops your welder from running smoothly, so you replace the liner. At which point I jump in, can I pinch that please? I've got a couple of these, and hopefully you should see why I like them so much. If I just pop my fingers in there, because it's flexible and it's got a nice plastic coating which you can see gets scratched up, it's usually quite easy to feed down there and it doesn't scratch as it goes along. And that is noisy, but that is quite easy to pull through. I'm being quite fortunate, I'm not going to lie, as I'm filming this I'm waiting for things to go wrong or to snag, because they invariably do in the real world, but I'm actually being quite fortunate. So another little tip, a little bit of masking tape, just to hold that wire in place. That will want to snag, so if I keep a bit of spare, and I'm almost creating like a little shroud, just to help guide that. Now these wires will probably be okay tucked back on themselves, but if you felt you need, and if your gut was telling you, you can also tape these just nice and lightly in the same way, just to help you out a little bit. I'm probably going to do the same with this one. Now I've bound these tight before, I've bound them loosely, and I just for whatever reason seem to find that loosely works better. Now, this is where it can prove me wrong about things going smooth, but I like to push and pull gently at the same time. I don't like to force anything. I'll just show you this hand. You can see I'm pulling only ever so gently as I'm pushing ever so gently, and there we go. As I said, my luck's run out. So I'll reset this and we'll have another go. Hey-ho! This is where being patient really pays off. I promise you, if you start writhing and pulling and tugging around on this, it'll fail on you and you'll end up getting frustrated and maybe damaging something. So on this lead edge, I'm going to go against what I've just said and actually tether this quite firmly. I'm still going to put a little taper on that lead plug though, just to try and streamline things a bit, because it's so easy for things to snag. They want to do when they're in there. And we'll have another go. Obviously you can't see this through a camera, but I can feel resistance. I can feel things trying to snag. There's going to be little holes, there's a clip there that's going to protrude in. Where we've put the gas strut, that thread is going to protrude in there, so there's obstacles you've got to remember for these wires to negotiate. So I'm pushing probably more than I'm pulling to try and get this to come through, and it is a struggle. I can feel it snagging, but I think we're there. Brilliant. Well, second time round that actually wasn't bad going. Now I've had this where it happens the first time straight away, no problems, or 16 times in and you're ready to call it a day, it finally gets there. I'm happy with that. I'm happy with 2 attempts. Whilst we're here, before I push that through, I'm going to attempt to manually feed this one because it's a short distance, and if it doesn't go then I shall just retrieve a little MIG welding liner. Fingers in there fishing. Oh, there we go. Again, I've been lucky with that. And off we go. And I might as well plonk that in. And whilst I'm here, I might as well attempt this one, seeing as my luck seems to be in. I've probably just jinxed myself, but hey, nope. There we are. And I'm going to attach that onto the washer jet whilst I'm here. Make sure that's nice and firm. Plug that in like so. Excellent. And again, it's a bit of a faff, but I promise you this is much better than struggling to feed things through without a cable, without a wire. I'll worry about cleaning that off later. And I don't like leaving tape on a wiring harness. Don't know why. I don't suppose it's going to do any damage or cause any problems. I see it's my job to put things as to how they should be, back to from when they were made, and they didn't come made with a load of masking tape stuck to the wiring harness, so I'm going to take it off. Again, it can be a little bit of a faff, especially when you're wearing gloves. Masking tape and gloves don't really get on. But there we go. I'll pop them out of the way, just because it's a little bit of a trip hazard. And now, if you remember, we've put some marks on. You can't see those very well, I suppose, but I promise you they're there, and I have a reasonable memory. There wasn't that much going on with this particular wiring loop. And another thing to note, we have a white block connector on the receiving end and a grey block connector on the receiving end. It tends to follow suit that they will be a matched pair, and rarely nowadays, it used to be a thing, all connectors were the same. Rarely nowadays you'll only ever get one connector fitted in one particular spot, which does make this a much easier job. That goes down, where did that bolt to there? That one like so, that one like so, that one like so. That one connects again, that nice reassuring click. Didn't need the 13mm, still got the 10mm to hand. And again, I don't know if you can see this, if you look sideways on, we've got a step on the left hand side and a flat on the right. It came off with the flat down there. We've got two little indentations as well, or rather raises there. And they're typically for that to rest in between. So as you tighten it, it can't waggle either side. These little peaks hold it in place. These are little hints, little bits of evidence giving you an idea where things should go if you did the tailgate 6 weeks ago and you've slept since then. There are usually identifying marks or little indications giving you a helping hand. It's just learning to look for them. There we go. So I like to run through connected, 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 connected. We know that's for the boot latch, so we'll pop that in now. That nice reassuring clip. Sorry, I've just bashed you on there with the camera on my head. And again, being mindful not to cross any threads as we're doing this. I always like to wind things in by hand first. Nip them up, and then when I'm happy, tighten them. Whilst I've got tightening in my head, tight, 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 tight. Yep. And yep, brilliant. Happy with those. And you've just got the high level brake light. We'll clip that in so we're not missing anything. It's clipped on. This is quite a, if I'm honest, that's quite a flimsy piece of kit, but if it does the job, I suppose it does the job. There's two little hooks in there and then two clips in the back, so we actually hook up first and then clip in, which is nice. And if you remember, we locked that tailgate, so when I press this button, that should release. So hopefully you can see that. That's locked, released. I like to check that before we shut the tailgate down. I've even gone to the extent before of dropping one of the seats, and if anything does go wrong, you can climb in quite easily and gain access that way. Pop that out of our way. Let's have the interior trim popped back on. Now, this end over here, I can see my clips, so I shall line my clips up gently. I know it doesn't sound gentle, but I promise you it is. Tap these clips in to position and then give it a good check. Go around, make sure it's secure. Customer's parcel shelf back on, because they like things to be as they found them. They like to find things, sorry, as they left them. Can't speak. And let's not forget that interior light. Gently clip that in, and if I just stand here, excuse me, that's tight, that's tight, that's tight, that's tight. Both wiring harnesses are in, connected. I know that's connected. I remember connecting those to the earth, latch mechanism and the lock. What I'm doing there should be obvious. I'm just going through giving myself a little mental checklist, which is another really useful tool to have, just to get used to double checking, triple checking, and if need be, checking again and again and again in your head. So I'm confident that I've done everything that needed to be done, except peeling that off with gloves on. I'll get that in a minute when I've finished. And that's it, guys. Tailgate done and dusted. Now I know what I should be checking. I know my next job is to make sure the rear windscreen wiper works, the boot lock still works, the brake light works, and we've also, don't forget, number plate lights, although in this one it's in the bumper, not the tailgate. Basically, if you remove a panel, you need to make sure that everything on that panel works as it should do once you've been involved with it. So if we remove and replace a door, we check the mirrors, the windows, the lock mechanisms, you know, the speakers are working. With this tailgate, want to make sure that the rear wiper works, the washer squirts water, etc, etc. These are just good methods and processes to get into. Hope that's been useful and of help.